So how long did it take me to become fluent in Japanese? That's kind of a difficult question to answer, but I'll do my best. So if you mean by fluent the ability to speak smoothly and articulately while kind of maintaining all the grammatical rules of the language, I would say I was fluent within about 6 years of moving here to Japan. I could have done it faster looking back, but I was working as an English teacher, and that's a lifestyle where what happens with a lot of people is they kind of just get stuck using English all day long, even though they live in Japan. And they get busy with their job and their family, and they might reach a point of kind of passable Japanese where they can order a beer or maybe, go shopping or something, maybe figure out something at the bank, but they never really reach a point where they, for example, to be able to run a business or make sales calls on the phones or something. So I progressed kind of intermittently, I would say, my first 3 or 4 years here. Although I did kind of, among my English teacher peers in my area, I was of the top 10%, I'd say, of Japanese speakers, which really isn't saying a lot, by the way. But once I decided to open my own business, I got really serious about studying. Again, that was kind of the most serious phase. And I went for the JLPT Level 2, which is kind of the standard for working in Japan in a Japanese company using Japanese. And I passed that, so that gave me the confidence to be able, that I thought I would need to run my business. And that was almost 5 years ago when I took that test. So for other people, I've met people, particularly people who are working in a purely Japanese environment, who've attained what I would call fluency in maybe 2 years. But they were working extremely hard. They were studying hours a day, going to school in Japanese, and then also working in Japanese. So once you get the hang of it, so to speak, the hang of the way Japanese works, it gets a lot easier. Pronunciation is not that difficult. It's really about the grammar, and reading and writing are really difficult. The words in and of themselves are not. There's a lot of nuance to it, but it is a very, very systemized language. It's incredibly logical, the way it all locks together, and there are very few exceptions, unlike English. But if you're an English speaker studying Japanese, one mistake people make is they always try to compare English to Japanese as they study, or Japanese to English, and it's a big mistake. They're very, very different languages, and it can actually slow you down if you're always trying to make sense of how Japanese does things. Don't do that. You're much better off studying the underlying principles of what makes a language work. So things like nouns and verbs and pronouns and adjectives and different verb tenses and clauses and all of those relationships. That will actually prove very helpful, because that's kind of the superstructure of language, and you can take that and use that understanding and look at Japanese, and that will help you to learn a lot faster. So once I started studying English, I was forced to look at how English actually works, and that kind of boiled it down to the basic elements. Almost language is almost like an operating system, right? So English and Japanese have very different operating systems, but once you understand the elements that are required to make an operating system function, you can study different operating systems, right? Between iOS, Android, Linux, Windows, right? Very similar elements at play, but they're organized and structured very differently. So I'm waiting for a student to come in any minute, so I should probably wrap this up. But yeah, my general estimate for fluency in Japanese would be 2 to 5+ years for someone who is really working on it. If you're cruising, kind of just picking it up here and there with bouts of intense study, it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 years or more. I know people who've been here 20 years that still really don't speak that well at all. I've known people who've been here. There was one guy, he came for like 3 years, And he was an English teacher, and he just like attained a bizarre level of fluency. So it depends on the person. But I think anything less than 2 years is going to be pretty remarkable. But people do it. So anyways, yeah, it's a very open-ended question. A lot depends on your own background as well, the need you have for the language, your linguistic abilities as they are when you begin studying. If you already know a second language, it's going to help you out a lot. If you don't, that's going to make you struggle a little more. And if your first language is anything similar to English, you're probably going to have a more difficult time than if you spoke Korean or Chinese. Those languages do share a bit more of a connection with Japanese. So I hope that answer is helpful, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for reaching out. And until next time, bye-bye. Didn't end.